Good morning, everyone. How are we doing?
Good.
Good. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Brian Blood, and today we're going to be talking about how to think past the meeting. And thank you all for joining the main session. We will be joining those breakout rooms later on today, and we can help you with that. But for right now, we'll all remain here in our main session. So today during the session, our main objectives are going to be to kind of redefine the purpose of a COC and a COC meeting to help best meet the needs of our section and lodges, and then form richer relationships and ties of brotherhood between COC members while we do that. Then develop ways to help with lodge performance outside of traditional COC meetings, and develop a plan to be more connected with your COCs. So the first question I have for all of you is, what do you think the purpose of the section is? And feel free to type that out in the chat, write it here in your guidebook, and unmute yourself if you'd like, and we'll kind of discuss that. So drop some answers in the chat, write it down, think about it for a couple minutes. Great answer, Nate. So being able to host an annual conclave and provide support for the youth of the lodges and any other help that they might need to succeed. Anyone else want to drop anything in the chat or unmute and speak up at all?
Yeah, I can go. I would say one of the rules of the lodge is to support our lodges and give them any resources that we have from national, or create new resources to help them as much as we can. And then also as a secondary role, it's to host our conclave as well as other engaging in fellowship activities to better our lodges within our section, but also to help inter-lodge communication and stuff like that.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. All great answers. Here in the chat, we've got something from Jaden of being able to be a source of information for the lodges. Terry mentioned supporting the growth of lodges through ACT conferences and engagement throughout the year, as well as then host that annual conclave. And Aiden mentioned being able to challenge the lodges to be better. Anyone else have any other comments on this? Well, you all had great answers, and really, based on your answers and kind of the core principle of the section is, the purpose of the section, when it comes down to it, is to support our lodges. No matter what we do, everything is designed to support the lodges in your section, whether that's, everything you do needs to be designed to support our lodges. So how do you, as sections, support your lodges? What are the things specifically that you do that support lodges? Take another time to drop some things in the chat, unmute on that one as well.
You said unmute, Brian?
Unmute or in the chat, either one works, Terry.
Okay, yeah, I guess I think it varies from section to section, but the biggest things that every section should be doing is an ACT conference. They should have engagement and lodge chief summits and things like that at their council of chiefs, as well as providing a quality program that keeps people engaged at the rally or their conclave, whatever you call it. So.
Yeah, exactly. All of those year-round tasks that you're all doing to help kind of support lodges. Luke mentions, being able to hold calls with lodge chiefs to kind of directly form those relationships and help them problem solve directly. Nate, along the same line of hosting monthly calls with lodge chiefs to allow building relationships and problem solving as well. So all great answers. So when we look at different events that I see sections, and we all see sections hosting, conclave, at conference, COC meetings, whether that's also monthly calls, all of that goes directly into supporting our lodges directly, right? Each and every one of these needs to be focused directly on supporting lodges, not whether that's having a fun engagement and being able to increase activation, or being able to problem solve directly on hard-hitting issues with Thrive metrics, or even just being able to pass meeting agendas and everything. Each and everything that we do needs to be focused along these, going back to supporting our lodges. So this meeting is going to focus mainly on how do we get COC meetings to support our lodges, right? At conferences are set up fairly well to support our lodges. Conclaves are a blast, and we can get a bunch of people activated and there in time. But how do we get these, hour-plus long meetings that are at times fairly boring to support our lodges directly? And so with that, I'd like to ask you, what does your typical COC meeting look like?
Yeah, Brian. So at C3A, we usually start off with Friday night being optional. We have a pretty big section, so travel, if it's easier for them to travel Friday night, then we allow that. If they do come Friday night, we usually have some fun. And then Saturday, we get into the actual business. So we start off with a fun icebreaker, though, to keep that engagement. And then there's business programming, and then we usually have a nice lunch, and then we do more business and programming, with usually a training thrown in there somewhere. And then Saturday night, we go and have some fun. So we generally, the section will pay for all their suppers, as well as an evening activity. And then Sunday, we all go home. So that's what they look like for us.
Great, Terry. So you really make a full weekend event out of it, for sure. Anyone else? There's some people I haven't heard from yet. Tim, you want to go?
Yeah. So for us, a COC meeting usually will happen before one of our. Well, we do kind of a couple of things. So on Friday night, usually before we have our meeting, our COC meeting on Saturday, but the Friday night we'll have a Lodge Chief Summit where we get all our Lodge Chiefs together and kind of explain to them what's going to happen the next day. But we also help and assist them with planning and what they're doing, and we get their updates so that we have it ready to go for tomorrow. And then on that Saturday, we have kind of like an icebreaker, some trainings. We go through all of our business, and then we usually do try to have some fun activity. Usually at our fall council of chiefs, it's a little less fun. It's one of our more business type meetings, but our WCOC is where the fun really shines. For those of you that might know, it is our party at the Kalahari. We do our WCOC at a water park. I know a bunch of people in here might have actually been to it before. And last year we actually did a combined WCOC with C1B. So that was a really cool opportunity to get to have a lot of airmen there. But also, it gave us the ability to get a lot of airmen to our COC and have maybe some airmen who might not have attended a section event before then attend, because we have that pretty fun aspect. I know we've also done COCs like Top Golf and a bunch of other places. So bringing a little fun in always does help.
What about for the rest of you? Hayden, Ethan, Aaron, Luke, Aiden. What do your guys' COC meetings look like?
Yeah, sure, I'll go. So my lodge chiefs are fairly demanding that every minute of their time that I use have an explicit purpose to it. So everything that we do is fairly streamlined. So there might be like a icebreaker that'll take a specific amount of time, and then everything else is essentially just business. And we're all close enough to each other that we only ever use like a part of a Saturday, not a whole weekend. When we do it in person, it's been online recently.
Okay, great, Aiden.
So under normal circumstances in our calendar year, we'll have anywhere from 3 to 4 COCs outside of our events. So usually we'll have one at Conclave and have one at what was called our forum, which is kind of what we did as an ACT conference before the ACT conference was a thing. So we would have a COC at those, and then we would meet at the Wheeling Nailers Arena and watch a hockey game for one of them, and have a full Saturday of just working on the COC, and then we'll sleep at the arena overnight, and then leave Sunday morning. And usually we incorporate trainings for our lodges at our COCs before we actually start the business section of it, so that way we can assist our lodges before we get down to business.
Ethan, great answer, and I love the background. It's my go-to background for most of my Zoom calls, even during school. So shout out to Central Region Comms for being able to make it look like you're in Zach Schoenfeld's house every day of the week. Aiden, I did want to ask you one question. Do you think that the way you're having to do COC meetings to maybe meet the needs of or the demands of your lodge chiefs kind of limits some relationship building you can do with them?
So we do a number of things outside of COCs. I have twice a month we do a chiefs call where we essentially all just get together and talk for like an hour and a half about whatever, do activities, that kind of a thing. But the COCs are always just business.
Okay, great. Anyone else want to jump in here?
Our COCs for C5B, this year is kind of mixed up with COVID. Normally it'll be like a business meeting, and then after that we'll go out and do something fun like Topgolf. Or we'll have, one where we go to the site and then have a planning meeting there in COC. We're having a COC at the ACT conference, and then typically a COC over the phone before conclave.
Yeah, great.
So one more thing to add about one of our COCs is a couple of months before our conclave, when it's in person, we'll get together at the place where we're going to be having conclave, and all of our chiefs and all of our COC will walk through the entire property, and we'll have a nice tour and then have a COC to discuss everything that we saw afterwards.
Perfect. So I'm seeing a lot of themes. You guys are, Mike? You're seeing a lot of similar themes with, trying to do some sort of fellowship activity, also trying to engage our lodges and doing a lot of conclave planning, right? And trying to definitely mix that fellowship and planning and business aspect together, right, to get more people to come. And so a typical COC meeting, from what I've seen from some of the stuff you've talked about, is there's a lot of conclave planning, some lodge reports, lodge check-ins. You might have a training or two that's developed, and then you have, if you're able to, you have some fellowship events, right? And this is kind of your typical COC meeting, whether you're able to do it in a Saturday afternoon over the phone on a phone call, or even on All right, thank you, Joey, for hopping in there in the chat. Hopefully you guys can get power back at your council office. And otherwise being able to kind of maintain this business mindset and hopefully then have some fellowship afterwards, right? But for me, when I've seen this, is they're very focused on the sectional aspects, right? We're voting on things the section's going to do. We're voting on conclave reports, and we don't seem to focus a lot directly on our lodges. And so how do we change the focus of our COC meetings to directly support our lodges in what we're doing here, and not just focusing on, maybe having one small fun activity or the random business that has to get done for the section? Does anyone have any ideas on this?
I would say that a great start, sorry, Terry, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I think part of it, obviously, I think part of the discussion we should talk about how you flip the actual content to be about them. But I think when you do talk about the stuff that relates to the section, I think the wording you use can go a really long way. So one of the things that we do in C3A is we really let them know that this stuff is either up to them or like for them. Like we do this for them. And when you really word it like that, there's a lot more, I mean, we see personally a lot more buy-in because they get a little bit more enthused knowing that this is kind of like all about them, even the decisions that the session makes. So I think part of it's wording, and then the next is just, the actual content.
I would have to say that with C1B, and I know C7 does this as well, but having a Lodge Chief Summit on that Friday, as well as giving them the rundown of what's going to happen for the entire weekend, it also helps us go over how the lodges are doing, giving us a report of what they're working on, and so we can help problem solve with them or help them continue with the growth to allow them to keep doing the good work that they're doing.
And Nate, you guys you invite everyone to your COC meetings, right?
Correct.
So you all touched on a lot of the main points, but some tips and tricks here is it's not all about section event, section conclave, at conference. So focus on the lodges. What specific events are they doing coming up, and kind of try to dig in a little deeper than just the surface level report. That kind of goes into this in-depth lodge check-in, being able to keep everyone accountable and building up on goals that were already made previously at conferences and other check-ins there. It's real easy as section officers to focus, oh, I've got this conclave and this at conference and I need these voted on and I want this trading post and everything. But that's not really our purpose, right? Those events help facilitate better support for our lodges, but it's not about I want the best conclave. It's has my conclave help support this lodge in some way? Has my at conference help support my lodge in some way? And then continuing to build those relationships and fellowship, right? That's what's going to make you all and your entire section the most successful, is if you're able to have deep relationships with lodge chiefs, lodge officers, and their entire LEC. And so when we're looking at lodge check-ins, I've seen a lot, it's like a committee report. Oh, well, we had this event and we had this many people here and we did this fun thing, and you go on to the next person, but there's no follow-up questions. There's no getting groups of people together, having roundtable discussions, reevaluating goals that were set previously in the year. You have this at conference where you're able to set goals. Use a COC meeting, carve out an hour to really go into these goals on a metric-based level and a qualitative level and see, are they meeting where they want to be? Can we check in with them? Can we change maybe where we need to go? And then reset those goals, reevaluate and reset those goals, make them more reasonable. And then, as some have mentioned before, with the Gemini program or lodge partnership program, try to create some working teams across the section. Match up a lodge that maybe does really well in inductions, but not so well in activation, with another lodge that isn't doing great in inductions, but their activation rate is off the charts, or vice versa. You can match them up and have them be able to start talking, even if it's only once a month, and you're able to help facilitate that. That will not only grow relationships across your section, but it'll help grow community and make the section show that it's about the Order of the Arrow as a whole and about our section as a whole, not just about my individual lodge. And this will be a great way to play off each other, build those other relationships, and continue to strive towards our goals. And then I think the biggest point here that we sometimes miss out on is our point in our values, right? It's real easy to get maybe some lodge competition going on and some animosity between different lodges in a section that maybe have differing views on how the section or the lodge should operate and different traditions. And so I want to use this time to reflect a little bit in your guidebooks as well on what brotherhood means to you and how to best foster those relationships, because kind of reevaluating that purpose with your section and remembering that we're here for brotherhood, cheerfulness, and service across the entire section, the entire region, the entire nation is a great way of kind of showing some purpose behind them and being able to kind of bring everyone together. So take about 2 or 3 minutes, reflect on that. If you want to share out or put that in the chat, about a time for self-reflection on you and how to best kind of implement that in your section. All right, so if we can come back together from a little bit of that reflection, now we're going to go off into breakout rooms and focus on building our own COC meeting, kind of with the skills and the ideas we've learned today. Some of us have been implementing these processes for a while, depending on what section you're in. Others, maybe need to reevaluate how their COC meeting looks. And so you've all been assigned to a breakout room, kind of split up, and there'll be a staff member in there to help you form this. We're going to spend about 15 minutes on it. But some questions to remember and kind of think about is, what items do I have to cover in a COC meeting? Can some of the things I normally cover in a COC meeting, are they maybe better suited for a CVC call later on that doesn't need to involve the lodge chiefs or everyone I have at a COC meeting? Maybe reevaluating when conclave planning should occur. Should I be brainstorming and planning really in a COC meeting, or just kind of updating on where we are in this and allowing lodges to select people to come up to that group, but maybe not have to be involved in the intimate, detailed planning that can take hours and hours and drag on sometimes. And is my COC meeting continuing to support lodges? Is what I'm trying to implement helping to support them and make sure they're meeting their Thrive goals? And then how do I continue to have fellowship and foster relationships in our COC? If I'm just focused on business, right? Maybe you're at a COC meeting and lodge chiefs don't even know who each other are. That's not great for building great team cohesion at this point. And then kind of reflecting on that last slide we just talked about, how do our values as an organization play a role in COC meetings, and how can they help bring people together? So we're going to go ahead to breakout groups. So leave this meeting, be back here by 10:10 Central Time. So in 15 minutes, come back into this room. you should be assigned a breakout room for 1, 2, or 3 with this beyond COC beyond the meeting, and then plan out your COC meeting. You've got a couple lines there at the bottom under your relationship building plan, and then we can come back together and talk about it for 5 minutes and then head you off to your section breakouts. All right? So I'll see some of you in breakout 1 and see you all back here at 10:10. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started, call on each group. So with group 1, with Luke, Nate, and Danny that I was over with, what all were we able to discuss?
Go ahead, Nate.
Well, we focused a lot on bringing our lodge chiefs together and the relationship that we have with our lodges, especially on Friday night having a lodge chief summit and during our COC section conclave planning meeting, and talking about how the section conclave will benefit our lodges and what they can offer that we can sort of mold our conclave to fit what they want. And also talking a lot about how incorporating fun and an awesome weekend of fellowship into the COC allows for a growth as a section and building inner relationships with all of our lodges, as well as getting people to come to section conclave later in the year, whenever that is for your section.
Luke and Danny, do you have anything else to add? It seemed to cover most of it.
Yeah, he really took it away there. A big thing we just stressed is you really got to form those relationships with your lodge chiefs and really have it so that they can rely on you and trust you, so that you can get their whole lodge to trust you to buy into your events, and really just develop as a whole section that trust each other and will attend section conclaves and support each other in ideas and such.
Yeah, great. So then group 2, was that with Terry, Ethan, Aiden? Are you with Mike?
Yeah, I mean, that was the people in it, yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of took, we talked about concepts overall and not just like planning a weekend, because different sections just have different availability for a COC depending on their size. So the concepts that we took away is that each COC should in some ways probably have a lodge chief summit, or a time where the lodge chiefs kind of hang out with each other. And then during that time, you can use things like the Gemini program and make them work together and things of that nature. We also just kind of talked about business. I mean, we talked a lot about how, depending on the feelings of your lodges, some might feel as if adding a bunch of fluff to a COC is a waste of time. So we talked about some ways to possibly combat that, to add more fellowship. One of our sections, one of the chiefs had a really bad problem with that, he said. So we just gave him some tips on that. And then one of the things
Terry,
that we talked about.
Mind me asking, what were those tips?
Oh, Aiden, if you want to share those, you can, because we told them to you.
Yeah, thank you. So the big problem I have in my section is that we've had a bad history of having really long and drawn out and boring and just awful COCs. And so my whole thing was, I'm going to be respectful to your time, Lodge Chief. So it's just business, and we go through it quickly, efficiently. But then, of course, the issue is that leaves very little room for fellowship. And so some of the other section chiefs in the call were talking to me about that, and how things like, going, having a COC at another lodge's event, or just going to those events as section officers, can help foster those relationships and make them more willing to be cooperative and really start to enjoy those fellowship events.
Great. And it looks like group 3 just came back, so you've got about 1 minute till we have to head to our section breakouts, if you want to provide a quick overview of what you guys all talked about.
Yeah, we kind of talked about what kind of fun activities you could kind of pair with a COC to make them a lot more engaging and build that fellowship. So one of the things we kind of talked about was looking at what assets you have inside of your section, whether that's, a baseball stadium or a minor league hockey team or like a Topgolf, or just like small things that you can add or that can add to your meeting by going to. We also talked about what you can do, just if you're at like a scout camp to add to those. We talked about the boat building competition at my section, and I believe Terry's section did last year as well. And we talked about, what other things can you do to spice up and make those COCs more engaging if they're a little bit too business heavy, to get those airmen engaged who might otherwise not be engaged.
All right. Well, thank you, Tim. That's time for today. But I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. And if you've got any other questions, my name is Brian Blood. My email's brian.blood@central.oa-bsa.org. And you can also message me either on the region Slack or here on the SOS Teams, because I'll keep that on my phone probably for a while. I'm also the region training coordinator, so if you've got any training questions at like the region and national level or some training problems you're running into, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help facilitate some of those conversations for you all. So enjoy your section breakouts and the last session of the day, everyone. And again, thank you for joining us today.